The first one is that a lot of your problems come from centering men. This one gonna have the girls a little shook, I can't lie. Yay! Hi everyone! I hope you are well, or as well as you possibly can be, given all of the circumstances, astrologically, societally, systematically, that come with existing. If you've made it this far, good for you. Wow. I'm gonna not look at the viewfinder because my hair is not giving anything but confusion. Hi, my name is Jasmine Kylene. I am a spiritual counselor, I'm a journalist, I am a young lady doing her absolute best, and I'm excited about this video. I've been wanting to make this for like a couple weeks now, and today I have so much zest for life, and I'm like, today's the day that I make it. So obviously this is a video that will stand the test of time, which I've been meaning to make things with more longevity, like for my own personal sake, so I'm glad that this is something that will last the test of time, but it also, the reason why I'm in this state of reflection has a lot to do with what's currently happening, because not only do we have Mercury in retrograde right now in the sign of Gemini especially, so whenever we're in a retrograde period we really are in this state of reflection and reviewing and really kind of looking backwards in order to move forward. We also have Jupiter in the sign of Aries, which is sort of completing its rotation through the zodiac, and it's finding itself in this place where we get to create newness, but we're creating this newness from a place of reflecting on everything we have learned since the last time Jupiter was in Aries, which was in 2010. So I've been really sitting with the journey of life that I've embarked on ever since 2010, which mind you, I was not in my 20s in 2010. I was in is that ninth grade? I think I was in ninth grade at the time. But we've been in this sort of karmic period ever since then. So I've really been looking at I think we have all done so much work in regards to learning what our truth is, what it truly means to live honestly and to live authentically. And so that has come from all of the experiences that we've had since 2010, and that has honestly encompassed my early 20s, my adolescence, my young adult years, all of, I think, the most pivotal and impressionable years of one's life. And so I just think that a question that I've asked myself, and I would really invite you to sit with, if you're working with this transit right now, if you're watching this around the time of upload, but honestly at any time, I think this would be a helpful thing of just sitting down and asking yourself, what would 2010 me be proud of about 2022 me, or 2023 me, or honestly, what does young me, what are they proud of in regards to future me? And yeah, when I sat with that question, I just think that the most evident thing for me was that I'm living the most honest and authentic reality that I possibly could. I've never been more myself. I've never lived a life that is more me, and that took a lot of mistakes. That took a lot of facades that I was living through, a lot of performance. And so I was really reflecting on the things that I had to learn in order to be in this state of honesty and authenticity. And I'm gonna title this things that I wish that I knew in my early 20s, but honestly I couldn't have known them in my early 20s, because these are lessons that you kind of need to experience life in order to learn. And my life would have been different had I had all this acquired wisdom and knowledge. And I know that there is, if I'm 26 now, I know there's a 36-year-old version of me that's oh wow, you thought you knew, you thought you had things figured out, just wait to see how much you'll learn. So I think this is kind of a check-in of where I'm at right now, what I've learned, and what ultimately would have helped 20-year-old me know at the time. And so if you are in your early 20s, then take this advice, write it down, journal it. But also it's just worth noting that I wouldn't have changed my course of action for anything. I needed the breakups, I needed the wrong jobs, I needed the blow-ups, I needed all of that to be in the sovereignty and the strength that I stand in today. So yeah, here are 10 things, I think they're 10, I'm not great at numbers, so we'll see at the end if they're 10. But here are 10 things that I wish I knew in my early 20s. The first one is that a lot of your problems come from centering men. This one gonna have the girls a little shook, I can't lie. And this is coming from someone with, I wouldn't say knowledge, but who's given themselves permission to admit that they are queer. I'm giving very much pansexual, but I have grown up very heteronormatively, and I realized now upon reflection that a lot of my problems stemmed from me trying to appease the patriarchy, me trying to perform for the validation and the attention of men. A lot of the ways in which I lived through facade was because I wanted to impress a man. I mean, a boy, honestly, let's be honest, a boy. I acted in ways that really dishonored my sense of self-worth because of a rejection from a man. I am still dealing with the remnants of, but ultimately have come light years far from where I was in terms of like disordered eating, and I know that that has so much to do with like wanting to be the sexiest, most palatable version of myself in order to be chosen by a man. I think a lot of my goals in life, while maybe not consciously, subconsciously, were led by what can I do in order to be chosen? Like, you know, love for me was like finding someone that I like enough that will choose me instead of like choosing someone and if it aligns, then it aligns. You know what I mean? And so I'm in a place where I'm so far removed from this belief, though I do witness old limiting beliefs resurfacing and asking to kind of be addressed again from time to time again. But yeah, a lot of my problems, a lot of the ways that I was disconnected from myself stemmed from wanting to please the men, honestly, centering my life on men. And the minute you give yourself permission to not give a fuck and to know that like just and I think, right, sometimes we can treat one extreme with another extreme. So I did go through the period where I was like, well, fuck dudes then. Like, I don't give a fuck what they like think about me. I got to a place where I really like demonize men, and I think men, like money and like anger, are neutral things that are defined by the intention behind them, right? We can choose to have a perspective where we witness them destroy. We can choose to have the perspective where we witness them build. And we can choose to ultimately see what the truth is, which is that it's like an individual case-by-case experience. And so I have incredible male friends. I've had incredible male lovers. I don't doubt that there will be more in the future. Like, I think that men, when they're great, they're great. When they're not, they're not. It just has nothing to do with me. Like, it has nothing to do with how I value myself anymore. So yeah, I wish she would have learned that earlier. The second thing is asking myself if I'm grieving the thing or the story. So I hope that this makes sense for more people. This definitely makes sense for me, but I watched myself really like mourn the loss and go through heartache when it came to the dissolution of a relationship or the dissolution of like a job opportunity or something that I really wanted. And it's just, maybe this is also specific to me because I have a Pisces Venus, so I can kind of romanticize the narrative of something rather than the actual something. But it's just so important that you step back and you ask yourself, am I crying over this job, or am I crying over the story that I've attached to the job, which is that it gives me this label, which means that it gives me this validation, which means that it gives me this permission to be worthy. And once again, am I missing and mourning the loss of this person, or the story that I've written about where we're gonna go together and what having them in my life means about me, right? So like really separating the thing from the story would have helped me get over things much more quickly. I think I mourned the loss of my ex years longer than necessary because I was crying over the story that I had written about us and the story that I was feeding, which was that no one is ever gonna love me the way that he loved me, instead of like, this is a person who's average at best, served a purpose, like they come a dime a dozen, babe. The third thing would be I wish I understood how important it is to control less, and this is something that at times still shows up. I'm still working on letting life lead a bit more, but I think that like and maybe this is once again my Capricorn Mercury, but I had always grown up with like a plan, and mind you, the plan changed from identity to identity, but like with a new identity came a new plan, and I was always so married to what my life was going to look like, how it was going to go, and the timing that it was going to go. And so I think that like had I let myself be led by life, which inevitably happened anyway, but if I had less resistance to letting life lead instead of like trying to have this tight grip on my idea of how I wanted things to go, things would have gone much more easily, right? I would have gone to the same place, but I would have gotten there smelling more flowers rather than like stomping on the ground because my plan wasn't going according to plan, you know? So just controlling less would have been helpful. The next one is probably my favorite one, which is being busy doesn't mean shit. I think especially because in my early 20s was really when like social media started to play a much bigger role in all of our lives. So that began like the comparison Olympics and like the competition that happens when you witness your life in comparison to others and in comparison to others' highlight reels, which once again is something that I think we're all going to have to like continually return back to make sure that we're not falling victim to. But I think in my early 20s, I was witnessing so many people be so busy and thinking that that meant something about them and thinking that I needed to be busy. And so filling up all of my time with as much as possible, because if I ended the day exhausted but what I deemed productive, then I would sort of validate myself through that and say, okay, well, you know, now you deserve rest because you've burnt yourself out to the point where your legs are nibs. Instead of really just recognizing the fact that that is such societal programming and it's so antiquated and it's so outdated, and like life is so much better enjoyed when it's savored, when it's slow, when it's led by inspired action and producing from a state of truth and an alignment, rather than like getting so many things done so that you said that you got things done for the sake of getting things done, to be worthy because you got things done. Like, what is that? I think, yeah, I valued my worth so much through the lens of productivity, and I just thought that productivity meant you were as busy as possible. And it's funny because I get, like, now I limit myself. I make sure that nothing is done within like the first hour and a half of my day. The first hour and a half of my day are completely committed and dedicated to mindfulness, to meditation, to dancing, to just like giving my body whatever it needs, through journaling, through coloring. And once it is time to work, after I've worked out, after I've had breakfast, after I've gotten all of my me time in, I limit what I do by maximum like 3 major tasks, which, mind you, that may already sound like a lot, but for me, I was doing like 7 things a day generally. I'm a manifesting generator, so like there's always, like, if I give myself permission, I will put that many things on my to-do list. And so now I'm like, just 3 things. And if by 6 o'clock that 3rd thing hasn't gotten done, it's carried out into the next day, because after 6 o'clock, it's back to me. I'll go ride my bike, I'll go for a walk, I'll clean, whatever gives me permission to be less in front of a screen, because I'm also very worried about my eyesight these days. But just like ultimately just like curating a routine where I do less has been great, because I've been more productive through it, because those minimal tasks I'm able to give my full self instead of giving 7 tasks parts of me, right? 20% of me. So yeah, I would just invite you to recalibrate what your schedule looks like, and if you're giving yourself permission to breathe through all of the things that you're doing. The next thing I would say to early 20 me, embrace wholeness rather than perfection. So I think that I was so idealized, especially like in this healing journey. I think the shadow aspect to a life of commitment to your own self-betterment is the fact that you can begin to create a very idealized version of yourself in your mind and strive to reach that level of perfection to the point where you demonize the work in progress that you stand in that moment. And I watched myself really like have this vision of who I wanted to be, and until I reached that version of myself, I always saw myself as something that was undone, something that wasn't yet, that's something that hadn't arrived, that wasn't worthy fully enough yet. You know, I can't be in a relationship until I am this perfect version of myself, until I'm this healed version of myself, or, you know, just constantly seeing myself like as a task, as one of my tasks. And what's so liberating about the life that I live right now is that I do not chase an idealized version of me. I really just embrace wholeness. So wholeness means understanding that within me exist so many truths, and at times those are truths that contradict each other, right? I am someone who is drenched in confidence and awareness of how special I am, and also like riddled with insecurities that come and go, and like it's not about ridding myself of those insecurities, but understanding that like insecurities can exist in juxtaposition to confidence, and it is a matter of I think acknowledging that, accepting that, while knowing that like what grows is where your attention goes. So like I feed my confidence more than my insecurity, but my insecurity would only get louder and like manifest physically if I just like stifle it and pretend it doesn't exist, because you know it doesn't exist within the idealized version of me that doesn't ever experience fear. Like, really, stop it. So yeah, I that's something. Another one is you don't have to decide who you are. So this is a lesson that I learned through I think really getting into human design and learning, like I already mentioned, that I'm a manifesting generator, because I think what's so important about being a manifesting generator is allowing yourself to be all of your layers at once. I think, you know, as humans, we're not one-dimensional, and I think I would be doing myself such a disservice to limit myself to one identity. And so I think that in my early 20s especially, I was always trying to figure out who I was and like get a hold of like what label can I give myself, especially professionally. Like I was like, am I going to be a journalist, or am I going to be a counselor, am I going to be this? And like, you know, I was someone who was very, very childlike but also very sensual. So I was like, okay, do I be this sexy being, or do I just, you know, kind of dead that and be this youthful being? And I was always trying to like figure out who I was. And I'm in a place now where I realize who I am is something that I need to ask myself in the morning, and that morning will let me know. And if that morning I wake up and I'm feeling very masculine, then I'll put on a button up, and if that morning I'm feeling very feminine, then I'll put on, you know, my long earrings and my flowy gowns and I'll twirl. But like, it's just, there's so much of me that exists all at once within my wholeness that I would just be doing myself such a disservice to like dilute a part of me in order to uplift another. And in fact, I think all parts of me begin to flow much better when they're all acknowledged. So just understanding that like life is a consistent cycle of death and rebirth. That's why I have my little spider friend. Just to remember that like it's in allowing yourself to become whatever change is presenting itself in that given moment that you actually live in your truth. I think life becomes performative and it becomes a facade when you try to live in a singular identity. So yeah, I think early 20s me wasted a lot of energy trying to figure out who I was, because now I'm in a place where I'm like, you'll never figure out who you are. You just have to like do what feels right in that given moment and express yourself in a way that feels true in that given breath until that truth becomes a new truth, and then you just pivot, you know? You are not your accomplishments. I feel like I kind of already touched on this a little bit, but I think that like, mind you, I think this goes hand in hand with like the last point that I was saying about being labels. I think that I was trying to understand myself I think I was trying so badly to understand myself that I thought understanding yourself meant being your accomplishments. So like, for example, if I felt like I was established as a journalist and like that's who I am, I'm a journalist, or if I felt like I had been making strides as a counselor, then like, okay, great, you're a counselor then. I think I let my accomplishments and the things that I had done define who I was, and that is just not a sustainable way to live, because you'll make a milestone, or you'll hit a milestone somewhere relative to your accomplishments, and you'll ride off the high of that, and then once that high comes back down, you kind of have to decide who you are again until you reach another milestone or another, achievement. And yeah, I just think it's so worth noting that like your doing should be fueled by your being. I believe that was something that Oprah said. Oprah said that your doing should be fueled by your being. And so like it's so important that you are aware of and in alignment with like who you truly are, outside of the labels and outside of the roles that you play for society or people in your life. Like, just who are you? And then, creating things from that truth. Like, if I'm an expressive human being, then like, okay, here's a form of my expression, and here's how I'll show up in the world in a way that honors that truth. And those are just things that happen. Those are things that you do. Those are ways that you spend your time, but they're not who you are. And allowing the things that you have done to be who you are leave you very susceptible to that whole like comparisonitis thing where you begin to see yourself as less than when you see other people that have similar labels accomplishing at a faster or higher rate, because then that tells you a story about yourself. But if you let yourself be defined by just who you are, there's no one to compete with, because only you can be who you are. I hope that makes sense. I just feel like I talk in riddles, guys. Which honestly leads me to the next one quite beautifully, which is to stop trying to sound smart. Like, I think, and this is something that I learned more recently, so like, I'm 26 now, so I'm incorporating 25 me into this. 25 me needed to hear this, but like, I was doing an interview with an artist named Mallrat, and she mentioned about how she likes lyrics that are very matter of fact. Like, she likes lyrics that are like, I'm in the car right now and this smell reminds me of you and this is how I feel, as opposed to like the very like ethereal, airy metaphors that we tend to hear a lot these days. And it really made me pause and sit. In the interview, I really asked her to expand on that, and she was talking about how, you know, we can really limit our experience of things when we are not doing or creating in a way that centers the intention of the art, but rather centers the intention of trying to sound clever for ourselves or clever for other people. And just to make that make sense, or to connect it to my experience, I feel like I have lived life, especially in my early 20s, trying to say the biggest words that I knew and trying to make sure that everything that I made and said was as poetic as possible, ultimately to appease my own ego, because I liked hearing myself. And it's just like, what a disservice and what an egoic way of living it is to just constantly be led by how can I sound as smart as possible and how can I prove to the world that I'm this clever human being. And it's like the humility in knowing that there are things you don't know, and that you can just say what you feel and not need to like dress it up with glitter, is just so liberating. It's just so liberating to be a human being, right? So like, express yourself artistically when you want to, but like sometimes something just has to be said, and it has to be said matter-of-factly. The next thing is that some things just need time. I was mourning the loss of a few things. I think, yeah, there were some pains in my life that I was really adamant about getting over, and I think I was doing so many things to like get out of the discomfort of pain. And it's just so important to know that like some things, all they take is time. All they take is time. And sometimes that time can be overnight. Like, it can take months, but sometimes it's like from one night to literally the next, it no longer matters and it no longer hurts. And it's like really one of those things where you go to sleep crying over something and you wake up and suddenly it doesn't exist in your body anymore. And that sometimes is how energy and emotions work. Sometimes that's how they move through. And so I think that, yeah, I was trying to force healing when sometimes healing just takes time. The next thing, I don't know what number I'm on, but I don't even know, whatever. The next thing is that healing needs breaks. I think that this journey of self-betterment can become really addictive, and at times a place to hide or to use as an excuse for why you can't enjoy life. Like, oh, I can't go out to that thing because I'm really working on myself and that would be a distraction. Or I can't be in this relationship because I'm still working on this shadow aspect or healing this wound, and so it would, it wouldn't work out anyway. And it's like, healing is not, there's no destination there. There's no version of yourself that is fully healed that you're going to arrive at. And so you need to make sure that you are living your life and that you are not so committed to healing that you aren't seeing yourself as already worthy or valuable, because then you're going to need to heal from that too. Like, that's a brand new wound in itself. Sometimes this like whole spiritual thing, this life of spirituality can become I think, yeah, just a wound in itself if you let it be. If you let it be something that bypasses having your human experience at full capacity. So, yeah, I think I just got really obsessed with healing to the point where I didn't let myself be immersed in like the human experience. And I think that, for instance, I arrived at a place where there really were no problems. There weren't any tension. There wasn't any strife in my life. I was just kind of sitting in all the work I had done for myself. I would be uncomfortable with that. I'd be like, okay, well then what is the problem that I have to work on? And it's like, sis, nothing. Like, you can let yourself dance and just enjoy what you've already done for yourself. And if something comes up, then something comes up. Just like, I'm an advocate for like being in therapy as long as you need to be in therapy, and then taking a break when you feel like you're at a place where you can hold yourself a bit, you know? So yeah, if you're in the holding yourself place in your life, or like you have the tools and resources necessary, you've learned the lessons necessary to kind of like not drown in your emotions but witness them, and yeah, just like let yourself live in what you have healed rather than always be so committed to the healing, you'll be able to put and implement into practice what you've done for yourself. I think that like only so much can be addressed if you are in your bedroom journaling, right? Like you kind of need to be in the experience of life to really put to the test all that you've built for yourself within. So yeah, don't let healing be a prison. And the next thing, I don't know if this is the last one, I'll count after this, is to stop rushing. I think that like there are so many things in my life, and this is something that I have to continually remind myself of, but like there's so many accomplishments and milestones in my life that and I have been so impatient with, especially with like love and career goals and career accomplishments, that like life, I know nothing about it, but I also know exactly what it is. It is the journey. You really have to make sure that you are smelling every single flower that you walk by, and that you are loving every breakfast that you make for yourself, and that you are enjoying the process, getting to know yourself and nurturing yourself, and basking your life in deliciousness and pleasure as you create what you want, rather than like waiting until you get to the thing or have the thing in order to exhale and celebrate, right? Like life should be celebrated every single day. And so just stop rushing. What is meant for you will always, always, always find you. So it's just so important that you let things arrive to you, because it's drawn to the scent of your garden that you nurture with self-care and intention and presence, rather than like rushing to get to somewhere that once you get there, you're gonna have the new checkpoint that you need to rush to get to, and then you're just not witnessing life. Okay, so I think that was 11, actually. And there's more on this list. I'll just like name them. Another thing is, all of you can exist at once. So I kind of touched that already. And that you waste a lot of time planning, which I've also kind of already touched on. So yes, those are the major things that I think life would have been a bit easier had I known in my early 20s. And if you are in your early 20s and you're watching this, I hope that you implement these, that you sit with these, that you journal on these, because it'll save you a lot of time. Not that time needs to be saved, right? Because it's about the journey. We're not rushing, but rather that you can use that energy to focus on other beautiful things instead of having to learn that lesson the hard way. And if you are not in your early 20s, honestly, for any part of your life, and you feel like these lessons are ones that you kind of want to implement more, then yeah, I hope it served you. I am still working on implementing all of these in a more intentional and centered way. So yeah, I am so grateful to you. And if you want to reach out to me or work with me one-on-one, you can hit me up on my Instagram at JasmineKylene, or book a session on my website, JasmineKylene.com. And subscribe if you want to. Okay, bye.